Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to our 3ds Max and After Effects tutorials. Now we are in the second part of our tutorial. In the first part, we already tracked our scene in After Effects and exported the data to 3ds Max. That's why if we scrub through our timeline, we have a tracked scene. Alright. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace this teapot with a more interesting object like the one we have in our example. And if we take a look at this simple animation, we're going to see some things or components we need to deal with. And those are the shadows, the reflection, the materials, also the, let me see, lighting, of course. Okay. We're going to use Vray also in this tutorial, so if you are interested, please stay tuned. Okay, so in 3ds Max, let us change our renderer to Vray. Okay, when we change our render settings to Vray, our submenus will also change. So now we have the Vray indirect and all these settings. What we need to do is to reset this to set this up for our own purposes. First, let's disable our built-in frame buffer. Frame buffer is the one that renders, is the built-in renderer for Vray, but for now we will use our own the default renderer for 3ds Max. And then let's click, let me just see. Here in the adaptive, here in color mapping, change this to exponential and affect background. And for the environment, we will play with this later. And also the camera, maybe if you want to add motion blur a little bit, but not today. In the indirect illumination, we'll click on for the GI or global illumination. And for our irradiance map, this should be low for testing purposes so that we can move fast. But if it is our final render, and remember to bring that to the original one, like also here, you can also set this to low settings first in HDTV. Okay, since we are in the testing phase. Now I will show you the most of the things we will deal with. Press 8 on your keyboard, and also this guy here, and then also M on your keyboard. Now in the materials, we'll play with the environment and the materials of the model, and here in the render setup we will have to tweak it for our also the lighting purposes. Alright, so first let us create our plane. Let me just set this up quickly. Click the plane and Alt W. And remember, when you look at this, this is our camera. So to move away from camera, so that we will not mess it up, press P. So it's in perspective. Now you can move around and the camera is not moved. On top, while this is selected, plane, let's create our plane here. Okay. And let's go to camera view again. Let's hit this guy and then press C to go back to camera mode. And then let's edit that, go to modify tab, and let's change this up. Alright, let's move this into position. Okay. Alright, and the length maybe similar to the length of the stool, and the width almost like so. Alright. Let's change this width also. Okay. Looks alright. And then we will add our lighting. And what kind of light we will use? We will use the V-Ray light. And then V-Ray sun. And to to know where to put the light, you just look at the shadows in your scene, and I'm assuming the light comes from this side, and it goes to the which creates the shadows going to the left. So on the top view, we can click here and drag it to where it should point, and then it will ask you what do you want to add the rewrite sky, and just say yes. And then let's move this in the left view. Let's move this on top. Okay. So now, if we render that out, let me see, how do we render here? Render. The environment will be too bright, but you can see already that we have shadows, alright? Okay. So I think this is the wrong way, huh? Oh, like this. Oh, and then if you can, if you see the render, you can notice that the whoa, wait. You should select this guy before you hit render. You can see that the environment is too bright. And why did that happen? Because we haven't set our hit 8 our, let's see, exposure control. So go to exposure control, and then Vray exposure, and click whatever you want here, maybe EV and temperature. So it's about 6,500 Kelvin, I believe. And if we do that, it will calculate the settings for us. Now we can see that it's a little bit better, but I think it's still too bright, maybe. Let's add some materials so that we can see it better. Press M on your keyboard, and then let's add our materials. Let's add a V-Ray material right here, and let's click this and put it to our teapot right there. Let's create another material for our plane. Alright. Something like that. Alright, let's render that. Looking hideous. Looking hideous. Alright, there we go. It's too bright, huh? Let's lower our light. Click the light, and then in the modify tab, let me see the size. Let's make it a little bit bigger so that our shadows will be smoother, maybe around 40. When the sun becomes bigger, the shadows become smoother, or it's not that sharp. And then the intensity, let's lower this to about let's say 4. And then as you can see, it's like it's not sharp, the shadow here in the stool. That means that it's probably cloudy, so it's an overcast. So hit overcast and hit M, also hit 8. Now we want to control our environment because it's too bright. Click in instance, drag it, drop it, and then double click it. And now let's just move this so we can see the sun in our left. What we can do is click this, specify the sun, so click none and click the sun. Now we have the V-Ray sun 001 here. Also, if we have it set to overcast, also here let's set it to overcast. Now if we click here and hit render, by the way, now we have a much better look. It's still too bright, I don't know why. Maybe the sun is too bright, so let's lower our sun 0.3 maybe. Let's add some shadow bias to this. Subdivision, no, the subdivisions. Alright, Okay. If it's still too bright, we can lower this to 0.25, I think. Okay. Hit render. Yes, the wrong one. It should be this guy. We're getting there. We're getting there. All right. Now, if we change this to a very reflective material, that's why we need to change this, guys. Let's change the name of this guy. Remember, this is the teapot, right? Let's change this to teapot so we know. And this guy was the shadow. Hit enter. So if we change this to a very reflective item, let's say this guy. Let's reassign it. Let me just take a peek at that. If we hit render, it will be very reflective and very bright because our background, our environment is full white. Remember that. So we need to change our environment. Okay, so I do not have the HDR or the spherical map of this place, but let's try to mimic that. Let's find a material that looks like that. So let me grab that for now. So let me see. We have some HDR here from Google. I don't know which is the best. Let's try this guy. Let's drag this to our 3ds Max and right here in our material. Let's double click it and let's change this to environment and spherical. Remember, it's a spherical one. Now let's change our environment. And how do we do that? Let's go to our Vray and change this environment GI and click this also on. Drag this here as an instance and also here. So what that will do is it will provide the environment, our skylight, to this thing, this map, and also the reflection. So what happens is, and if we click this, instead of white, it will render out the reflection. You see that? Isn't that awesome? But it's very dark. Now why is that? Because these are not HDR images. These are just JPEG. It should be HDR. So the light of it is not, the color range is not that good. The dynamic range. To fix that, we can go to our materials and double click this and go to our, let's brighten it in the output. Maybe change this to about, I don't know, 7 or 10 maybe. Let's try 8. And while we're here, let's enable color map and brighten it up a little bit. So now, if we render that, it becomes clearer, right? Now we have a problem here where the material of the stool, it's bouncing back to the item or the model, but it's the material itself. So how do we deal with that? One trick we can do is the what we call the color mapping, camera mapping rather. So let's do that. I'll show you how to do that, where we will project the image into our screen like a projector. So where's the item for the stool? This guy. First, we will add a V-Ray material wrapper. Connect the two. Double click on it. And this is the settings, guys, to create the shadows. -1 on the alpha contribution. Should map the surface, map the reflection and the refraction, and shadows also. There you go. And then you can reassign it to the plane. If you do that, if you render that, it will remove the material. It's like transparent, and then all we see is the shadows. But again, we still have the problem where the reflection of that material is bouncing to the reflective material of the teapot. So we have to change it. So here's how to do that. Here, let's add a new material, and we call that material as, let me see, double click on that shadow. Here in the diffuse, let's click our maps, camera map per pixel. We're going to create a projector. Let's project it to the camera. And what do we need to project here? Double click on it. To the camera, let's click the camera. So where's our camera? Can you see the camera? So we need to take a pic of our camera right here on top view. Can we see it? No. I think we have hidden it. Let me see. I'll right click and unhide all. There we go. So this is the camera. What we're going to do is double click on it again and then click none and specify our camera right there. And then the texture, let's change this to bitmap, and then let's go to our desktop and click our sequence again. So what will happen is, let's reassign that. Let me see. Let's reassign this guy back to the plane. So if we render that, now it should reflect the stool. Okay, it still doesn't have the correct reflection. So I think, let me check. So I think the problem is this guy. Let's uncheck this guy and let's see what happens. So now it's the right one. But if we scrub through, I think, to the timeline, let me check. Render that guy. Yeah, it works. It's good. It's good. You just have to remember that, again, in the materials, when you select your bitmap here for this guy, when you select that, you have to check sequence. Okay, and there you go. So now we can change our object and change this to a better one, right? So let's remove that and let's grab our model. Let me remind you guys, we're not talking about this kind of model. We're talking about this model, the OBJ. So let's drag and drop this to our scene right there, and let's place it in the middle. We can't do that exactly, just try our best. Alt W, and then we can move this. Let me see, click away and click the object. And what we can do is, if we drag this, you'll notice there are more objects in that we lose. It seems that our propellers or our rotors are left behind. So what we can do to fix that is Control Z. Okay, and then we need to press P to go to perspective mode so that we can move our scene. So then let's just freeze this light for a moment. Freeze selection. So let's grab it and then let's group it. Okay, and then now what we can do is press C again, select it, and while this is selected, we can right click here, and right click here, and then it will reset to the center of our stage. So now we can drag this on top, maybe rescale it to fit our scene. Okay, and then it's just a matter of adjustments. Now let's go straight to our, let me check, it's all good. See, now we need to change our materials. Okay, so our materials, let's grab a Vray material and let's change this. Let's see, let's plug it into our car, and if we increase the reflection and render this, you can see that is reflecting our background very well. What we can do is change this back to the non-reflective. What we can do is to add our texture. So let's drag and drop it to our, nope, not that model. Let's drag and drop that to our slate material editor, and then just plug it into the diffuse so that it will change the color. Now if we render that, we can see that it's now having the correct colors or the diffuse. So we're good, we are good. Now let's add some reflections to it. M, and double click on this. Let's call this the ship. Let's add a little bit of reflection, maybe something like, I don't know, maybe here. That will add a little more reflection. There you go. There you go. Cool. Let's make it bigger. The problem here is, let's press P, perspective. If we go upwards, you can see that the rotors still doesn't have the right diffuse. So let's press M. Let's grab our material and also plug it to our object, our propellers or our rotors. What happened? Okay, the same material here. Make sure we do not put it in the wrong object. Let's just preview that for 1 sec. Okay, we're good. I think we're good. We're having some reflections here. As you can see, the windshield is white. In the original example, it's black and it's almost fully reflective. But here, since this is not about texturing much, this is not a tutorial about texturing, so maybe we can skip it right now. We'll deal with that in the next tutorial. So let's go to our C camera, and then we can render this guy out. Let's see what's going on. Nice. Let's try a bigger one. Okay, looks good. Almost. Alright. So we can still edit the sunlight. Let's unfreeze all. We can edit our sun, maybe. I don't know. Let's add some size, make it bigger, shadow, and it's up to you, I think, to play around with these settings. Okay, that's it. I think we're gonna wrap up this tutorial, and then I hope you guys subscribe so that you can be notified for the second part of this tutorial, the third part rather. so that we can animate this and fix some other textures and some great stuff. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and we will see you next time.